Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. How many of y'all, just out of curiosity, real quickly, have ever sat through police dynamics training or character first training conducted by either Franklin or myself? Oh, we've got some fresh meat in here today. That's good news. And good to see some return visitors as well. This program this morning, we're going to look at 5 basic principles, 5 basic factors as how to establish the character standard within your organization. And it goes back to the title of the conference, Polishing the Tarnished Badge. What is it? And what does this badge represent? What does this badge stand for? What is this badge all about? And here's our observation. Almost exclusively in law enforcement, the standards that we set tend to be achievement-based standards. They tend to be performance-based standards. And they tend to be behavior-based standards. And our message this morning is all that's well and good, and we need to continue to have high standards in all 3 of those arenas, but there also must be a character standard. There must be an additional element added to our overall organizations in establishing this standard, this character-based component within your organization. And so we use this model that we call the Twin Towers of Integrity to communicate this particular point. If you've been through police dynamics training, you've seen this model before. It essentially says that the peace, the safety, the security within our jurisdictions, the success of our organizations are built upon a foundation of integrity. And this foundation of integrity has 2 primary components. It has a character component, and it also has a competency component. And both are critically important to us. Now, when we talk about peace and establishing peace within an organization, we have officers that work for us, you have officers that work for you, that are extraordinarily gifted at bringing peace out of disorder. Highest ideal of law enforcement, to bring peace out of disorder. You have officers that are very skilled at this. You have officers within your organization, in fact, that are so adept, they are so skilled in their ability to restore peace that you could take them into a highly charged, volatile, near riot situation. And in a matter of moments of them arriving on the scene, they would tend to have a calming influence, wouldn't they? They would tend to de-escalate the situation. They would tend to restore peace out of disorder. Some of our officers are so good in this particular arena. In fact, after a short time, you might not even think you were at a riot anymore. Some of them are so good. You might think you were at something much more peaceable, maybe something like a church picnic. And of course, we also have officers that we could take to a church picnic. And in a matter of minutes, they've turned it into what? Yeah, a full-scale riot. So what's the difference between officer number 1 that makes him or her so incredibly powerful and productive within our organization and so valuable to us, and officer number 2 that makes him or her such a problem child? And when you analyze these principles, you see that the foundational, fundamental difference between the 2 is their character. And you see, we've spent a lot of time, effort, and resources over here in the competency arena. We have trained our officers well in America today. They are highly competent in most of the arenas that are necessary, the skills necessary to get the job done. But our observation also is that we have neglected this component to one degree or another. And it seems like no matter what seminar you go to here at the NSA, we went to the prayer breakfast yesterday morning, we went to the worship service yesterday morning, and it's always about character. This is a message that we as leaders in the law enforcement community are consistently talking about and discussing because we understand how important it is, how critical it is, but a lot of times we don't know how to implement it. And that's what this seminar is about today. How do you implement these standards? Let me just ask you this question. Out of all the training that you have been to in your professional career up to this point, what percentage of your training would you say has been competency-based training, knowledge, skills, and abilities, versus how much of your training has been character-based training in the area of ethics, integrity, and professional standards in that arena? What percentage would you give me on the competency side of this equation? Give me a number. How much? 95% or so in the competency arena? 90%? When I ask that question across America, I'll never hear less than 80%. 80% competency-based training or above. Yet on which side of this equation are almost all of our problems? I mean, think about it this way. When's the last time you had to terminate someone in your organization for a lack of competency? I mean, when's the last time you had to terminate somebody because they couldn't qualify on the pistol range? They couldn't pass the driving course. They couldn't write a report properly. They couldn't testify in court. They couldn't prepare a case. They couldn't process a crime scene. I mean, I know those types of things happen. But when's the last time that happened versus you had to terminate somebody for lying to a superior, for falsifying evidence, for taking something that didn't belong to them, for taking indecent liberties with an inmate or an informant, or embezzling funds, or using abusive force? These are the issues that are tarnishing our badges in law enforcement in terms of the public trust and perception. Yet our focus, almost exclusively, has been over in this side of the equation. So we want to show you today how to add this character component, how to integrate these qualities within our organizations, within our own lives, and encourage them in the lives of our officers, these building blocks of men and women of integrity. Because if we leave this component out of the equation, what's going to happen to our organizations? They are going to tumble, and they are going to crumble. And now what has happened to the integrity? Now what has happened to the trust? Now what's happened to the relationships or the peace? Those of us in this room are called to take moral leadership in this initiative. As leaders within our organizations, to establish and reestablish this character component. And it brings us to a fundamental truth. I mentioned at the beginning that most all of our standards are achievement-based, performance-based, behavior-based standards. And if we focus on achievement to the exclusion of character, we will encourage bad character. Let me say that again. If we focus on achievement to the exclusion of character, we will encourage bad character, which has the result of tarnishing this badge. I have 3 children, one of which is in the back. Let's imagine for a moment that one's an A student, one's a B student, one's a C student. Now that I think about it, you don't really have to imagine it. That's pretty much how it breaks down, isn't it, Kelsey? Let's imagine that all I do is praise and recognize my children for their achievement, and achievement alone. Which one's getting all the praise and recognition? The A student, Kelsey. The valedictorian right there. Which ones are getting more discouraged and frustrated as time goes on? The B student, certainly the C student. If I focus on achievement to the exclusion of character, what do I encourage the C student to do in order to make the grade? Cheat. We just flipped a switch in your thinking. You want to know why cheating is so prevalent in America? You want to know why people are lying on their resumes and lying on their job applications? Is we have put achievement ahead of character in our organizations. And we are now reaping the fruit of that. You got your thing? Now I'm going to turn you back over to Franklin.